living la vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs. Time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage. We're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal. Yeah, you're getting closer, motivated and focused. Don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
So guys, there is Maria Edwards. She is Milla Edwards, M-I-L-L-A. Is that a nickname, Milla?
It is. It's my childhood nickname.
Ah, see, I was Jimmy, and my mom only called me James when I was really bad as a kid, and that's my real name, but Jimmy is the nickname. So Milla, can I call you Milla? Would you like
Yeah,
to?
you can do it. It's actually, my second name is Gabriella. And when I was a kid, my mother said, tried to ask me, could you say Maria Gabriella? And I said Milla Gella. So when I was really small, I was that. And then when I was older, it became Milla.
Oh, I've got one better than that. Watch this. So my brother told me this, God rest his soul, he's dead now. But he said, when you were a little kid, you couldn't say William. So my name is James William Moore. You know what came out? James Women Moore.
Yeah.
He said, you were a player out the gate there, man. So. But guys, I have Milla here today to talk about not just her own story. She's got an incredible story about how she wanted to kill herself. It got so bad with this bipolar condition that she had. I definitely want you to talk about that. But she's also here because she's a researcher in Denmark. Are you in Copenhagen, right?
Yeah, I'm Copenhagen. I'm actually Swedish, so I'm from Malmö. I'm from on the other side of the sea. But I live in Denmark, so it's very close. It's like half an hour with the car. So Copenhagen.
I have a heart for Swedes because they were the ones that really put LCHF.
Yeah, I know. I'm very proud to be Swedish.
Oh, I know. Like Andreas Ienfeldt, kind of a big star.
Yeah.
Annika Dahlqvist from there. Yeah, I know all the peoples in the keto-ish world there that have really pushed this and probably were mentors for you as you were going through your journey learning about keto. But I want to get to your story in a minute. But she's also a researcher now, you guys, into traumatic brain injury and really severe and how ketogenic therapy can help with that. And when I wrote my book, Keto Clarity, we talked about that being one of the emerging, up and coming kind of research fields. And so I'm really happy to see people like yourself looking into this. And I actually got to meet you a few weeks back. I was the MC of this conference that you attended, this online conference.
Yes, Keto Symposium.
I heard that you were a researcher. I'm like, girl, I got to get you on my podcast. So here we are.
Yes, I'm really grateful. I'm just this is my first podcast ever. And it's really an honor you have interviewed so many of my people who are inspiring me, idols, other people and I just love your podcast. I'm really happy to be your guest today.
Thank you. And you're going to inspire a lot of people with your story here today. So why don't we get right into the bipolar issue? When did that start to manifest? And just tell us the story about how it led you on a deep, dark path.
So I got my first depression when I was in 8th grade. So I think I was just turned 13. And this is very typical with bipolar disorder, that it starts very early in the young teens. And it often starts with depressions. And my parents, who were both doctors, and my mother had experienced a lot of depressions. And what I now, both my parents are dead, but I'm now 100% sure that my mother was bipolar too, but she wasn't diagnosed. So they took me to a psychiatrist. I just, didn't go to school, and I was staying home and in bed, and they couldn't really figure it out because I used to be a very outgoing, very happy kid. And the psychiatrist just looked at me and said, you're depressed, and got me some, not antibiotics, but antidepressants. Yeah. And I was actually on that medication for 10 years. Wow. It didn't help me anything. So I was taking
Ritalin or something like that?
No, it was SSRI. So it was called Cipramil. And the thing was that Cipramil gave some side effects So I was given another drug at the same time that was called Buspar. I don't know what it's called in the US. So it was kind of, one medication gave a lot of side effects and another medication to kind of be against that side effects.
To offset the side effects of the side
Yeah.
effects. Right.
Yeah. And I gained weight, and all through my adolescence, I struggled. I didn't feel any effect of the medication. I went to therapy and stuff. I didn't know, what was going on. I also had periods with kind of elevated mood and energy, but it wasn't, because it's so close to my personality and I'm very outgoing. I didn't think anything of it, at that time. And what happened in 2014 was that I was prepping and started dieting for my first bikini competition, and bikini fitness. And up to that point, I had a stressful time because I was kind of taking a lot of courses to be able to go to the university. You have to take a lot of courses to get in. So I was working hard and doing that, and I had been dieting a little bit, and then I just felt suddenly I couldn't sleep. Like I woke up 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was so tired, but I felt like it was shaking inside my arms. It was just my whole body was just up and running, And in the beginning, I didn't feel like an elevated mood. I just felt this very, not very stressful situation inside my body, and I just continuously couldn't sleep. And then it went into less and less sleep and more euphoria. And this is what I now know of hypomania. So maybe just to explain for people, so bipolar disorder is what in the old days were called manic depression. But what manic depression is that today you call it bipolar type 1 and 2.
Right.
So to make it easy, type 1 is when you have full-blown mania, maybe like psychosis. And when you have that mania, it's more that you can lose awareness of reality and do really crazy stuff. And hypomania is kind of a light version of mania. So it's like you get very hyperactive, you have a lot of projects, you talk a lot like I normally do, but even more.
Yeah.
And you don't have to sleep a lot. And then you can also get hypersexual. And it doesn't mean that you go and run around with a lot of people. It's more that you have this heightened sexuality inside your body. So your whole system is just running. And what happens afterwards, even if you're like type 1 or type 2, is that you crash at some point.
Yeah.
And get really depressed. So what happened for me is that I had this hypomania. I didn't know what it was. It lasted for almost half a year, and I was coming closer to my competition, and my moods and my energy was starting to go up and down. I could feel really great in one moment, and then I was feeling awful the next. And I still didn't know what was going on. And I did my competition. I entered the university, biochemistry, at bachelor level at that point. And I just felt that, I was stressed, I was burned out, something was wrong. I couldn't think, I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. I had all this depressive racing thoughts. And I went to my doctor, and my doctor actually had worked with my mother previously in Sweden. This was in Copenhagen, but they were both general practitioners. So she was like, okay, maybe you're bipolar, because, she, being a colleague to my mom, she had suspected my mother was bipolar. And I was so upset. I didn't show it to her, but I was just like, I'm not mentally ill. What are you talking about?
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Hear that. There is such a stigma,
Yeah.
not just bipolar, but like you said, with mental in general, as if there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Wish we could remove that stigma. And I know a lot of the work that you're doing with TBI now, your research, is to try to say, hey, look, this is not something that shows they're crazy. They have a pathology that needs to be.
So I'm really open with this, because this is also later part of my story. I never felt ashamed about this, but what I felt triggered at that point, I didn't know anything about mental illness, or I heard about bipolar schizophrenia, major depressive illness. But, one thing I hated people saying to me when I was growing up was, you seem a little bit manic. Because my mother used to be manic. So I just hated that, because I don't want to be like my mom. Like, my mom is a little bit cuckoo sometimes. I don't want to be like her, And
Is it just a genetic component, or are there other things that contribute to it? I know we're going to get into that a little later.
Yeah, it's actually with science, there's also so many opinions, but a lot of some science say that there's like, if I have a kid, I don't have kids yet, there's like it's 25% chance to give those genes to my kid, of the bipolar genes. But at the same time, with many illnesses and mental illnesses, you have to have this kind of environmental, so often for people with bipolar is that they've had some kind of trigger. So maybe they've had like depression many times, they maybe had some kind of small episodes, and then they go through something stressful like I did. I was studying, I was training, I was dieting, and a lot of things happened in my life, and then suddenly it's just like bam, your illness gets so worse, so it becomes an illness. So there's like, it's both. I think that if you could live in this kind of cocoon where everything was happy and not life, I think you could have the genes and not get it triggered. But I think you have this sensitivity. Yeah.
So kind of an epigenetic response.
Yeah.
Could supersede whatever genetic predisposition there might be.
Yeah. So what then happened was that I actually changed doctors, because I was just like, but she said to me, she said to me, just read about it, just read about it. I might be wrong. I have to refer you to a psychiatrist. And I was just like, I didn't say it to her, but I was just like, I'm not bipolar. I'm not bipolar. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I changed doctor, and I went home and I Googled. And then the first time I read about bipolar, it was just like somebody punched me in the stomach. Like on a deep level, I could feel that, okay, this makes so much sense. This makes so much sense to everything I've been through my whole life. But at the same time, I was in this kind of, so I was kind of, this must be it. And then I was like, no, that's not it. And then I went a couple of weeks, I read about it again. And then I was like, yeah, I'm bipolar. And that, no, I'm not, So I was going through this back and forth, and I got worse and worse and worse. And I just started to be very depressed, started to have suicidal thoughts. The first suicidal thought I actually had in this, that was maybe half a year after this competition, when I've been half a year in school. I had been to like a 5-hour exam in biochemistry without any books or anything. So you had to, and my brain was in overdrive, and I was biking home, and I didn't feel like very low. I didn't consciously thought. And then there was almost like it, I never had thoughts or voices in my head, but it was like almost like a thought that came from the outside that said something like, it was just so instant. It was something like, I saw a picture of myself, shooting myself or doing something. It was just really instant. I got so scared because it was my thought, but I almost felt like somebody was talking inside my head.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And then it just gets worse and worse. And I went, I had this other doctor, and I said, my previous doctor had told me I'm bipolar, and I've read about it, and I think it makes sense. And I talked about my history and the hypomania, and she was like, that's not my expertise, but, I will get you to a psychiatrist. And then the system in Denmark, I think maybe it's similar in the US, but the system is really, really bad. So first I had to be on a waiting list for like 4 months to go into this kind of somebody assessing me. And because bipolar type 2 is so difficult to diagnose, because with bipolar type 1 mania, people get so obvious crazy that they often get hospitalized when they're manic. So it's not, it's very easy for doctors to see that.
Right.
But because hypomania can be, we would be different. If I was very introverted and I started to get hypomanic, people would notice.
Yes.
But because it's so close to my personality, it's like people like, okay, that's just Maria, that's just Mila, that's just the way she is,
Is type 2 bipolar misdiagnosed as something often?
Yes, there's like a tremendous amount of bipolar type 2 patients who get diagnosed as unipolar, like clinical depression. And the problem with that, except that they don't get the help they need, is that the antidepressants like the SSRI medication often given to clinical depression should not be given to bipolar because it can trigger mania. So a lot of people go to the doctor like me, not when they're hypomanic, but when because then everything feels great.
Yeah.
And then you go get a depression, you go to the doctor, you get SSRI, you antidepressants, and you get into mania, hypomania. Like there's also something called mixed states where you're manic but depressed. It's like your energy can be elevated, but your mood can be low. It's like a combination of depression and mania. And that can happen also if you take antidepressants. So it's so many people with bipolar type 2 that are not, and it's also the whole screening system. Like, I know I follow Dr. I think his name is Dr. Amen, a psychiatrist who has done a lot of scans.
Yeah, Doc Amen is his username.
Yeah, and he's also talking about in his TED Talks and talks that why don't you scan the brain? So when you have, I know that there's not yet diagnostic tools for scanning the brain and diagnose somebody, but there's so many reasons for mental symptoms. It could be brain tumors, could be something with the thyroid, it could be all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
And you should look at the brain, I think, to kind of, you know, research this area, because if you just talk to somebody, and again, with not a lot of resources in this area. So I had like 1/2 an hour with the first psychiatrist that told my story, and she had to go to holiday. You know, she had a summer vacation just after our meeting, and she said like, no, you're not bipolar. And then I had to wait a couple of months, you know, planning my suicide, getting worse and worse and worse. Got a second opinion at the same hospital. No, you're not bipolar. And then I had to wait for another 6 months for another opinion. And that's also why my illness, because as many people in the system, they give up. Like they look for help when they're really acutely suicidal and they need help instantly. Yeah. And I didn't trust the system. I tried to get admitted. I've never been admitted, but I was afraid for them to give me a lot of medication, to maybe lock me up or do stuff.
Did you tell anybody that you were suicidal?
Yes. So I did, but I was very, very, I did, but I did it in a way that I was very careful what I said.
Okay.
So I needed to talk about it, like many people who are suicidal need to talk about it.
Yes.
But I never told I never told anybody really how far I was in my plans and how serious I was, because I wanted to share it with people, but at the same time, I didn't want people to kind of call the police and get me locked up. I didn't want that, you know.
Well, I'm talking about your medical people, obviously friends, family, and people like that. But I'm talking about, did you tell any doctor?
Yeah. I told them everything, and they were like, the only thing they told me at that point was just like, well, then you have to go to the emergency room. And I did, and I talked to them, and I just didn't feel that they listened to me, you know, that they tried to understand me. So I was really scared of that. But what did happen was that I had I said to my doctor, you know, these doctors, they're not listening to me. They don't believe me. Can I get a referral to another one? And she said, okay, you can get one more, because I think that working with a psychiatrist is a lot of chemistry. She just said one more. And I was okay. And then I got recommended my psychiatrist today, a woman. And I was just like, at that point, I had been acutely suicidal for like almost a year.
Wow.
It was really, really severe. And I also had at one point almost killed myself at that point.
Whoa.
I went one night to the attic to get something to kill myself with, and I was really in despair. And all night for like half a year, I was very catatonic. I was like rocking, crying, screaming in the pillow. living in my car actually a lot because I had a lot of anxiety in my apartment. I was afraid of what I would do to myself. So I was driving around, sitting in my car, sitting at the beach, and I went to the attic, and I came back, and I was definitely going to do it because I couldn't take it anymore. And the universe made it so that I locked my key to the apartment in the attic room. So I was kind of locked out of the attic room, but I was locked out of my apartment. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, so I couldn't kind of wake people up. So I was sitting there on the stairs, in the kitchen stair, crying all night until it was like 7, 8, and somebody came and, you know, could open the door to the attic so I could get my keys and stuff.
Yeah.
But this last psychiatrist, I came in, I told my story, and right away she was like, of course, you're bipolar. She diagnosed me, I think, within 10 minutes.
Wow.
She said, like, what do you want to do? And she was so honest. You know, she was like, I said, I'm so afraid. I was almost 70 pounds less than I am right now at that point. I was very slim and fit. And I said to her, I'm so afraid of the side effects. I'm afraid of gaining weight. I'm afraid of this. And she said, you know, I have to be honest. All this medication I can offer you comes with very severe side effects. And they're kind of very toxic and crappy. But I was at the point where I was like, okay, it's my life or this. And I asked her, like, which one would you start? And she told me this medication. And we were kind of going back and forth, you know, which side effects. Here you lose hair, here you get acne, here all medications you gain weight, you know. And I decided on one, and within like 3 days, my thoughts, you know, were starting to calm down.
Yeah. So
I got it in, sorry.
I've got to ask you,
Yeah.
when you finally got someone that believed you, how did that feel?
I tried to tell her so many times that she saved my life. It was like, first of all, when you are so depressed, you feel very away also from the people you love and that love you, because you're very much isolated, and you feel you are experiencing something that is so severe that most people happily are not experiencing this. So they cannot really relate. You feel very alone. And when you also find these doctors that doesn't believe you, and she was just like, yeah, of course. I mean, and she said, you are obviously very, you know, well read, you know about this, you have done your research. And it was just like, I didn't believe it. It was just like, oh my God, like I was so afraid of the medication, but because she believed me and I trusted her, I was kind of willing to say, okay, because I still had that thought, you know, if this doesn't work, I can still kill myself next week, you know?
Well, and that's like, if you kill yourself, whether it's toxic or not, the med doesn't matter at that point. It's over.
Yeah.
But the med gave you a chance to get beyond that. A registered nurse said they don't listen at doctors how deep the depression is. They just go through a checkoff list.
Yeah. I just feel so much with everybody because in this period, I was very active on Instagram. I had another another profile that I still have that is now private, but where I wrote poems, and I got connected with a lot of people with mental illness that was also awake during the night. And I did this blog that I also sent to you, this blog where I wrote poems. And these poems were actually, in the beginning, they were actually my farewell letter. So I was writing poems to get through the night, but I was also thinking that at the time where I'm not here anymore, in my letter to my loved ones, I will link this and they can go and read my poems, and maybe they could understand why I killed myself.
See, the people closest to you, did they not see all the warning signs? Did you not have friends and family trying to put their arm around you, Maria, and say, no, you're going through something right now. I don't know what it is. You're going through something. Did that happen at all?
I think some of them did, but I was still like, I was giving some of it away, and then I was keeping some of it to myself. So I was kind of because, you know, I was so, just as ambitious I am in planning my PhD right now, that's the ambition I had to planning my suicide. I just wanted to succeed. I didn't want to have a failed attempt. That was the worst thing. So I was like, I didn't believe that there were any solutions, but that's what's going on when you're depressed. You know, whatever your friends say, well, you can try this, you can try this. You don't take it in. You think this is over. I can't be in this anymore. So I did have people, but it's also like I was sitting in my apartment almost for a year, like being almost catatonic.
Yeah.
I wasn't on Facebook. I normally very active on social media, and I was gone for a year.
Wow.
I never, checked in with anybody. People were calling me, but it's also, I think, with people. I had some people close to me that kind of kept in contact. But also, like I also said to you, the way I came into keto was that when I was doing this fitness competition, when I was hypomanic, I connected with Shannon Jordan Penna on Facebook, and she is the founder behind Quest Nutrition.
Yeah.
So she and her husband Ron Penna, they were very much into.
I know them both very well.
Yeah, and they were so much into the keto and everything. And she was very also involved when I was depressed, and we were talking back and forward on WhatsApp. And she actually tried to get me to the United States and to be with Quest at that point, and just do some stuff. But I was so catatonic, it's so sick that I could not do anything. I could not travel to the United States. But she taught me, when I was getting better, when I was on the medications, she taught me about keto. And we talked about this recently because I told her that I was going to go on your podcast, and she said, do you remember when I told you about keto? And you were just like, no, because I was so scared. I was so scared to be unstable again. And I had tried something like an Atkins, but I didn't eat a lot of fat. It was just mostly protein. And that made me a little bit manic. So I was just like, what is this keto and no carbs? And I'm going to get manic. And I did it, and it worked wonders. And keto has helped me not gain 150 pounds. It has helped me with the sedation.
Yeah.
That helps me with all kinds of side effects.
Look, I tell people all the time, Maria, if I never lost another pound eating a keto diet, but I had a sharp brain, a calm mood, a good memory, I would do it just for that benefit alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I do it, like for me, it's a therapeutic thing, Yeah. Now I've been off medication for like 8.5 weeks. And now I'm even more trying to be even strict with my keto. I'm doing like a keto carnivore, just how I feel it. And I feel that it's so important, especially now when I don't believe that I would be able to be without medication.
Yeah.
If I did not have keto, and if I did not have other routines, like people with mental illness, everybody needs routine, but they need sleep at the same time. They need exercise, they need meditation.
Yes. Gabby, health coach, says keto is the best she's found for depression, totally the best. What about nootropics? So you dial in keto and you kind of get that good and you're feeling the effects of it. Do you experiment with various nootropics, various brain altering types of things to help enhance what keto is doing?
No, I haven't yet. I've been thinking, actually, because doing my research, I'm probably going to use a ketogenic diet with exogenous ketones in my next study. So I've been thinking about, trying that. The thing is that we don't really have a lot of products here. So if I wanted to buy something, I needed some of my American friends to ship it to me, or buy it on Amazon and get it shipped. And
I'll hook you up if you need some help.
Yeah, I'd love that. I haven't tried anything really. And I've tried MCT a little bit, but I think for me, my ketones get really high. Like, I'm not, even though I'm overweight now, I have a lot of fat mass still. I have a very tiny muscle mass. I have a very tiny skeleton. So when I fast and when I do keto, my ketones go like 3, 4. If I fast, it can go like 7, 6, 7. If I do OMAD, they like 2, 3. millimolars.
Keto can be hard. Tabulating, measuring, baking, taking 3 months to perfect one recipe, and to mixed reviews.
Did something die in here? Oh, I think it moved.
And by that point, you give up your diet, find a dark corner, and stuff yourself with sugar, carbs, and regret.
This, isn't what it looks like.
Well, this is where Keto Chow saves the day. The easiest, tastiest, ketoist meal replacement on the market.
It's like ice cream melted in my mouth.
Yes, but melted ice cream with all the protein, nutrients, vitamins, and electrolytes your body needs.
Oh, that's cool.
And with 3 starter kits, each with restaurant tips, keto food guides, and a ton of flavors to try, your taste buds and your waistline will thank you.
Thank you.
So grab your starter kit today at jimmylovesketochow.com.
It's so easy.
Keto Chow. Make keto easy.
Well, and look, you're doing it for therapeutic purposes.
Yeah.
Supposed to be higher. People freak out about that. Oh, my ketones are too low. Well, you don't need them super unless you're treating some kind of a brain injury or something like that. Then you want that GKI, glucose to ketone index, good. And so with 3-4 ketone readings and then your blood sugar being what it does, it's probably well within that very healthy GKI.
Yeah. And I do go in and out of ketosis, and I go higher and lower. I have, like everybody else, periods when I'm stressed.
Yeah.
I don't, I've heard everybody in the keto community say, we don't have a lot of keto products here. So when I cheat on keto, it's 85% dark chocolate with stevia. So it has maybe 10 grams of carbs in it. Yeah. So it has a little bit of carbs in it from milk, sugar, and stuff. But I don't do sugar. I don't do normal carbs either. Right. But I can buy sugar-free ice cream or, and then my ketones drop and I don't feel as good. And then I have to go carnivore a little bit or fast.
And you realize it's not worth it to put that crap in your mouth. And we all want the little sweet treat every now and then. I get it. I will have that. Yeah. Look, you're 8 weeks off of the meds. You seem very happy, very zest for life. I can see it in your face. Kudos to you for finding this. So when did you start keto/carnivore?
I started with keto in very soon after I started medication. So it must have been February 16, March 16.
Oh, it's 2016. Okay.
2016, yeah. But in the first maybe 2 years, I was doing it a little bit more on and off because I was a little bit more, I wouldn't say going back to carbs, but more going back to a low carb. So being keto, low carb, low carb. And I think the last 2 or 3 years I've been more and more keto. And then it's actually my boyfriend who started carnivore and he was doing really well. And he introduced me to that. And I was and it wasn't that I just, it wasn't on purpose that I want to be carnivore. It was just I felt like eating, more carnivore kind of a diet. It was more of a need. I think a
lot of us that have been keto, and I'm the keto guy, we naturally gravitate, a lot of us, towards more animal-based foods. I would be very happy cooking up some burgers in a pan, and that's literally all I would have. Would be well, where's your broccoli? Where's your cauliflower? I don't really want it. I'd rather have another burger patty.
No, and the thing is, you posted the other day your go-to right now, and I was just I could have posted almost the same picture. I think the only ingredients that wasn't the same was cream cheese, but other than that, it was exactly the same mix. And I do that because here also steaks are quite expensive. Yeah. So often I go to some organic. We don't have grass fed on the packet the same way you have. I think it's because our cows also mainly are grass fed from the beginning. Right. But I do that a lot. And
so for the people that don't follow me on my stories where I post my stroganoff, I do this grass-fed beef with a little heavy cream, spices, salt, mozzarella cheese, and then sour cream drizzled on top. Yeah. It's a very delicious, all animal foods kind of meal. And that and be happy as a clam. And I have been.
Yeah. And it's also, I think that when you cut the carbs, you also get more sensitive to carbs. And we know that for a fact. I mean, there's studies showing with refeeding after keto, how you have this, you know, adaptation in your metabolism. So I think that cutting more carbs is also that when you then eat carnivore and then you just maybe eat 10 grams, or we don't have net carbs here. We just, you know, exclude the fibers. But then in 2025, you suddenly feel that is a lot, you know, because you're maybe used to 5 grams of carbs or 0 if you do carnivore. And I also think I heard you say recently, or maybe at the symposium, about when you do more of a carnivore kind of diet, you have less cravings. Because I suffered, I don't know how it's going to be now when I'm without medication, but one of the side effects of the medication, of course, was an effective metabolism, but also like this, the hunger I had when I was a bikini fitness athlete was minor in compared. Like you wake up during the night, you're not awake, you just binge, you wake up in the morning, you don't even remember what you've been eating, you overeat. And so I still had during this period on medication, sweet cravings, keto sweet cravings.
Yes.
And now I feel with also like keto carnivore and also being off the meds, I mean, I do still crave like dark chocolate sometimes, like sugar-free dark chocolate or something, but it's not as bad as before, you know?
Compared to where you were?
Yeah.
Light years better. And that you've weaned yourself off of this medication that, quite frankly, a lot of these doctors in the past said, you're just going to have to do this the rest of your life with progressive higher and higher dosages. You fixed that, Maria. So kudos to you. Your story is amazing. But I want to get into your research because you took this excitement for how you changed your brain chemistry, and now you're researching ketogenic diets, traumatic brain injury, some of the worst cases of that. Tell us about your research there in Denmark.
Yeah. So I just want to say to the other, it's not so people understand, it's not that I'm free of bipolar. I still have bipolar symptoms. It's really important to just emphasize that I still have to manage my illness.
How does it manifest still? What are some of the things that you still deal with?
So for me, it's like this last week, for example, I've had a lot of stress, a lot of projects going on. It hasn't been so much mood swings, but it's been more my brain activity. So I can wake up a couple of days, I've had several hours of very uncomfortable, very heightened brain activity. And it feels almost when I sit down like I'm running. So inside my body. So it's kind of hypomanic symptoms.
Wow.
And I need to kind of, you know, say to myself, breathe, because otherwise I just go and go there and this, and my thoughts is running. And then just in the afternoon maybe, or the day after, I just crash and I can't think. So it's more that my mental energy levels are going like up and down, you know.
So in those moments, I wonder, is breath work, is meditation helpful?
Yes. So I feel that when I get stimulated, if I feel like that, and if I go work, like I write emails and then I write one email and then I think of something and I pause that email, I write another email, and then I look on social media, I kind of enhance that thing. But if I just say to myself, okay, stop the stimuli, just shower, do some breath work, meditation, I always feel that when I wake up in the morning after sleeping, I always feel balanced. But when I start going during my day, you know, this hyperactivity in my brain can be triggered again.
Yes.
And I think when I get depressive symptoms, it's like rest, go out for a walk, maybe go exercise, fast, you know, stop eating, doing stuff like kind of heighten you again. So it's just, it takes a lot of effort to manage your illness without medication. I also need to say that you also always need to have your doctor in on this. I don't want to inspire anybody to quit their medication overnight and go keto, because they need to do this with their doctor.
Goes to say with any condition, if you're diabetic, if you've got heart disease, all the by the way, therapy could be Justin Timberlake on the on your player playing music too. So. right? Get you going,
Yeah.
get you a little more in the positive.
Yeah. So you asked about the research. So
Yeah.
I started the keto in 2016, and I was writing my bachelor in 2018. And when I was planning my bachelor project, which wasn't a clinical study, it was like a system. It wasn't a systematic, but it was a review I did. I went to my supervisor at that point, and I said, I want to do something with keto and bipolar. And they advised me not to do that. One, also because there's not really any studies to do any kind of review.
All the more reason to do it.
Yeah, I know. But then also because, they told me, that you're biased, and I can just say I'm very biased towards keto. Anything I would research, I will be biased.
But you don't stand to benefit from the research. Like, you're just, yes, you're biased. You've got an but trust me, all the American ketogenic researchers, they're also biased. They see the benefits that keto has, but they don't have vested financial interest in it doing well and being propped up. You just have information that you're trying to get out.
Yeah. So I did this. I started my bachelor doing a review about epilepsy and keto.
Yes.
So I got a little bit of information and knowledge about the mechanisms and how it started with epilepsy. And then I went into my master's in clinical nutrition, and right away, I talked to my professor, and I said, everybody's doing some kind of clinical research the last year of the master's. And we were talking about what we could do. And again, we talked about psychiatry, but also it's really hard to research psychiatry here in Denmark because there's not a lot of money in resources in this area. So he had some contact at the hospital when it came to brain injury. And this is my first study that I did that I'm writing the article right now. It's in subacute brain injury. So it's not the ICU where they just got, because it's very prestigious in the ICU. So it takes a little bit more, effort, and the patients are also very unstable. So you need to be very careful of what you do with them. So we started in the subacute phase, and that could be patients who are stable. It could be anything from, I included TBI, like traumatic brain injury, also stroke, and all kinds of different kinds of strokes. I did this feasibility study where I gave them enteral feeding, ketogenic enteral feeding products, and some MCT. And then I had some patients that it was a 6-week intervention. And I had some patients that got better and they started to eat. And then I had the kitchen make some ketogenic meals that I had made some recipes for. So I included, I think, so the outcomes was with feasibility is like, can you include the patients, the adverse effects, the level of ketosis? And I could get every patient in ketosis within median 1 day. So my limit was 0.5.
Wow.
For ketosis.
Wow.
Hold on. Then
Stop there. You got them into a state of nutritional ketosis or therapeutic ketones within a half of a day?
No, 1 day.
Okay.
So
I thought you said 0.5. That's why I was.
No, it was median 1 day. So for some patients, it was. So I weaned them off the standard nutrition that is very high in sugar.
Yes.
And that kind of took 2 days. So I had a period where I weaned them off, and then so my data is kind of counted from when they start 100% keto.
That makes a lot more sense because they're eating the standard Denmark diet, which I assume is as bad as America. And then go right to a ketogenic diet, and you get them in therapeutic ketosis in 1 day. That's a miracle, my dear. So now I know you're giving them MCT and ketogenic. Is it like a shake? Is that what it is?
It was a shake, but most of them was enterally fed. So most of them had either a feeding tube or they have like a feed,
So it got in their blood a lot quicker than it would, I guess, digesting typically.
No, because it's like the one that goes through the nose is just going down to the stomach.
Okay.
So it would be the same as you would drink it.
But liquefied, not solid food.
Yeah.
Right.
But then some, but actually I had 3 patients in the beginning that was eating from the beginning, and they actually achieved ketosis also. Like it ranged from 0 days to 3 days. So it was like some took longer, some was faster. But I also think that MCT also had something to do with it, you know,
Yeah.
applying it from the first day.
It is a precursor to beta hydroxybutyrate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I could include, I think, I don't remember, like 94. It was a very high number. I included 12 patients. There was 1 patient that said no, and because he was already eating and he loved food and didn't want to be a part of it. And they were above 0.5 beta hydroxybutyrate for 97% of the time for 6 weeks.
Wow.
So it was a very successful study. So I'm very excited about publishing it soon.
Yes.
When I'm finished.
So that's in peer review now? Is that what's happening?
No, I'm actually still working with some last data because I have a reference group. So now we're kind of talking, we looked at some function measurements, and we have 2 groups, but they're so small, the groups. So we're kind of debating, should we do, what kind of statistical analysis should we do? Because we can't say anything, you know, we won't say anything with significance.
Right.
So we're kind of debating, how do we analyze this? How do we present it? So it's kind of in the last phase of writing it. And then we're going to send it in hopefully soon.
So I am curious, you did say within a day and up to like 3 days, you got them into at least 0.5 millimoles on the beta hydroxybutyrate, the blood ketones. But we know from a lot of the studies looking at Alzheimer's disease, even epilepsy, some cancers for a very therapeutic purpose, dementia, those kinds of things, that having very high levels of ketones, which I assume the MCT assists with, to see when you add EKs, the exogenous ketones or ketone esters, what difference that makes as well, that it needs to be significantly higher so that GKI is at a good range. How long did it take for them to get to that level, and did they sustain at that level?
So it was so individual. So I had this woman, she went up to, like, the second day in ketosis, she went up to 4.5 without me adding in any MCT, because
Whoa.
I did start with the enteral feeding product that contained a little bit of MCT.
Yeah.
And it was the KetoCal 2.5 to 1 ratio from Nutrition. So I used that. It had a little bit of MCT. And then after a week, I added some more.
Yeah.
And she just spiked, and her ketones were like above 4, 5. So a lot of the patients were very high, above 3. But then there were like some patients, no matter what I did, they were like 0.5, 0.7, 1.2. So that's also why I want to, in my next study, I want to do the enteral feeding product again, and then do the exogenous ketones, because then I hope that also I had 1 patient who couldn't tolerate for some reason. We don't know if he was maybe pre-diabetic or something, but he couldn't tolerate the MCT and the fat. His triglycerides went to 5-6 times reference value. And I gave him more MCT and more MCT. And I talked to some endocrinologists about this, and they say, if you have pre-diabetes and you have fatty liver, you can't convert the fats to ketones.
Right.
You can't get the ketones up.
And that's where I was going next, Maria. I wonder if there's a way you could test for the patient's level of insulin resistance. There's all kind of little insulin resistant markers you can.
Yeah.
But I would be very curious to see the more severe insulin resistant people, like the one you were just describing, having a tougher time getting into ketosis because of the insulin resistance. And ketosis can help with that, but you kind of have to heal that fatty liver and heal other of these manifestations of IR before you can see those higher levels of ketones. And the higher level of ketones is not really what you're aiming for. Maybe some people become very efficient ketone users and ketone utilizers, so it shows lower on the meter. This is where we get a little tricky in the research of higher ketones, but that's not necessarily the goal.
The problem with this patient group is that they have so many comorbidities, and when you have a very severe acute illness like brain injury, often you have what's called stress metabolism. So this is what happens if you have illness. So the stress metabolism, you can be really healthy, get a traumatic brain injury, you get hit by a car or something, then you get stress metabolism, which will make you insulin resistant and your glucose goes up. So also when you do all this, like right now I'm planning what kind of outcomes and the measurements I want to do. And I have two very great, I have Dominic D'Agostino and Stephen Cunnan as my co-supervisors. So I have great advice.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, so I've heard of them too. They're awesome. So it's like, it's when you do, if you, for example, in this patient, he was very slim. He had a family history of high cholesterol, but he was Asian, very thin, and he had normal glucose before the incident, and then he had high glucose. So it's also very hard to know, is the insulin resistant, and the kind of diabetes they get, is it kind of a temporary diabetes due to the stress metabolism, or is it because they had some before?
I look forward to the day when we put the connection between stress and insulin resistance, because I've kind of posited this theory, Maria, that when you have insulin resistance, it actually makes you stress resistant well, and that stress impacts you far worse if you have IR than if you're insulin sensitive. You could have this amount of stress and it doesn't impact you. I think stress is such a key part of a lot of the chronic illnesses, a lot of the reasons why people have higher ketones versus lower ketones. Stress is kind of this ball, this little swinging that determines how you respond to the ketones.
And also, when you talk about acute brain injury, you have also this metabolic stress response. And one of the things with stress metabolism is that it also spikes your glucose really high.
Yes.
So there can be a problem if you, like in the studies where that I will, hopefully do soon in the future, if you do in the acute patients, if their glucose is really high and you want them to go into therapeutic levels of ketosis, and they also get a lot of medication that affects their metabolism, and they get it sedative, and there's a lot of, it can also be really hard. And that's also, again, why I really want to try the exogenous ketones, because, in that way, without also some of the side effects you can get from the MCT, like the gastrointestinal problems you can get, some of the exogenous ketones. It's not been tested in brain injury, in clinical, it has not been tested. It has only been tested in other population. I do have a colleague at another hospital, a PhD student, who is doing exogenous ketones. That they've done 2 studies for diabetes type 2, because they found out that diabetes type 2 also have this hypoglucose metabolism. So even though their glucose in their blood is super high, in their brain, they cannot metabolize glucose, so they don't have efficient energy in the brain. So they're giving diabetes patients type 2 exogenous ketones to kind of elevate that energy in the brain. And they have found that when they do cognitive testing of those patients, they perform much better on cognition, memory, recalling, focus, and all that.
Even with the higher blood sugar?
Yeah, I think
how does it get around that pathway? I'm real curious. You got my brain going now. How does it get around the glucose metabolism pathway? If the glucose, I guess, isn't going there, how do you get the ketones to go? It's a separate pathway, of course, but how does that work? So
the exogenous ketones can pass the blood-brain barrier. So what they've seen in these diabetes patients is that they have systematic, like they have high blood glucose in the body, but if you measure in the brain, the glucose does not come, the glucose is not as high in the brain.
Right.
So I think what happens with that, this is not my field, so I'm not an expert on this, but it's just that the ketones can go in the brain and it can work as a fuel there.
So we know that when there are ketones present in the blood, that actually has a blood sugar lowering effect. So
Yes, it does. Yeah.
well, that once you introduce the exogenous ketones or other external sources or even endogenous ketones,
Yeah.
that has this natural blood sugar lowering effect, and then
Yeah.
increases ketones more, which then gives
Yeah.
benefits.
And I think also like there's a lot of mechanisms to the ketogenic diet, and they're all, of course, done in animals. So it's also hard when you have to do a lot of this mechanistic work in animals, but it's also so hard to just extrapolate from animals to humans.
Yes.
But it, that's but also with the inflammation that we talked about, is that with diabetes and also with brain injury, you have in diabetes, you have the chronic stress, the chronic inflammation, low-grade inflammation. In brain injury, you have more of an acute inflammation in the brain, a lot of things going on. So there's a lot of, and also the epigenetics, and also, it heightens the blood flow in areas of the brain.
Yeah.
It gives an alternative substrate. So there's, even though we don't know how they work together, and we don't know which one are more dominant than the others, and we don't know this for 100% for a fact, but there's so many interesting mechanisms being, researched many places.
Well, and part of the challenge of being a researcher is you want to isolate the thing you're trying to determine as giving the benefit.
Yeah.
So in your case with your studies, that the study that you're currently working on, it's the ketogenic diet. But Rhonda,
Yeah.
a good point. Cold plunge can lower glucose and give you better ketones, which could then give you benefit. Then you've got things like red light therapy that you put right onto the brain to provide lowering of that inflammation and regulating the body. Could that be something that would be an add-on once you establish what effect ketones have? Then the next study you want to do, you said adding an exogenous ketone. Could you try some of these other things that would have benefit along with, as a conjunction with, ketogenic diets?
Actually, it's very interesting you asked that, because right now when we're planning, I had a lot of help from a postdoc. I had a lot of help from very amazing people during this study, and I still have. And his name is Christian, and he's a physiotherapist. And so his area in the acute patients with brain injury and also the subacute patients is all the physiotherapy you're doing. And we talked about, and this might be a part of my PhD, it hasn't been decided in the next study, is that because when you are a brain injury patient in the intensive unit and afterwards, you get occupational therapy, physiotherapy. There's not a lot about nutrition. The nutrition is still standard, but there's a lot of, you get a speech therapist. So there's kind of a package. So you can't really, it's very interesting to look at the nutrition, but we believe, because physiotherapy is also a very big part of it, to rehabilitate your brain and in your body.
Right.
So we're thinking about maybe doing a study where you maybe have like a group with ketogenic diet with standard training.
Yes.
Then you have maybe like a standard diet with also standard training. And then you maybe have like a keto group with some extra physiotherapy. So you might see if like, is the keto alone group doing better, or is like the keto plus physiotherapy, is that doing better? So like keto is doing something, but if you add some physiotherapy, I think in the Danish hospitals right now, all the other therapies, like you mentioned, like it could be a lot of things. There's so many. There's like cryo, there's red light, there's hyperbaric. We don't really have the facilities for that right now. I think also maybe, but that could also be very cool in the future to try that.
I love those kinds of studies, Maria, because you see the power of nutrition alone, but then you see nutrition plus things that we know provide benefit that the nutrition helps with. It helps speed up the lowering of the inflammations, helps speed up, moderating your blood sugar and your insulin levels and all the hormones in the body that would calm down all the things that are going on. But we're out of time. Maria Edwards is her name, you guys. Go check her out. Milla Edwards over on Instagram, Milla, and then Edwards. And great research. I look forward to hearing about your paper getting published. I know you will keep me in the know as soon as it gets.
I will.
Thank you so much for being here. Real
Thank you.
meet you.
Thank you so much.
Get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com. Woo!
Breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is. But when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different. But it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.